Hi guys, I hope that you're all doing really well. As you can probably see, we're doing another installment of my collection of videos. Today's video is going to be one on all of my various types of face palettes. I did see a couple of comments come in requesting this, so we are going to just go through every single palette that I could think of in my collection. We have a really wide range here, everything from duos to trios to all sorts of things. Some of these are purely blush palettes, some of these are purely highlighter palettes, some of these are a mix of a bunch of different things. So I hope that this is something you guys will enjoy. But before we get started, for any of those of you that are new to my channel, first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Natalia and I am doing a year-long no-buy for the entire year of 2020. So we're doing a lot of collection exploring this year. I am definitely trying to figure out all the products that I have. What do I like? What do I not like? I'm doing some Shop My Stash, some pan project videos. I am showing you guys my empties because I am going through some products since I am not purchasing new ones. And if you are also on a no buy or low buy or would like to get on some sort of a journey where you're using more products that you already have in your collection instead of constantly purchasing new products and getting overwhelmed by all of it, then you've come to the right place, because that is exactly what my journey has been about. And I really hope that you will consider subscribing. I hope that you will join our frugal, supportive family. And without further ado, let's jump in to all the face palettes that I currently possess. Okay, so before we get started, this was the widest amount of space I've worked with so far in my collection videos. I am hoping this works out in editing, and I'm hoping to be able to show you all the products and for it to be visible. I know my ring light is making this side really bright, and I apologize, but I just have very little to work with, and I hope you will understand. And then, since we are on the disclaimer boat, let me also say that I am not bragging by showing you guys all of these products. I know that I have a lot. It is part of the reason for why I'm on my no buy, is because I know that I have way too much and I don't get use out of all of it, and I haven't even tried all of it, and I really need to do that before I allow myself to go any further in any sort of makeup exploration journey that YouTube primarily has taken me on. So please know that I am definitely not bragging. I am showing this to you guys so that you're aware of why I am on my no-buy journey, and so that honestly it takes the shame out of having a certain amount of makeup for all of us. You might have, just one of these palettes. You might have a ton more, and I want for all of us to understand that that's okay, and that we will all figure it out in our own way at one point or another. This is not about normalizing the amount of makeup that beauty lovers have, especially here on YouTube. This is more about opening up the conversation to the fact that it is okay to have this much if you can afford it, and if you cannot, which has been my journey, it is okay to realize that what's done is done, that I need to at this point move forward. I need to explore what I have. I need to figure out what I like and what I don't. I need to be much wiser about my purchases, and I need to take the shame out of how much I own versus how much somebody else owns. Just because somebody only has one palette and I have 20 does not make me any worse of a human being, and vice versa. Just because I have all of this and you are only able to have one face palette in your collection, or maybe not even, for whatever reasons that may be, that does not make any one of us inferior in any sort of way. I feel like collection videos are really fun, they're entertaining, but they're also educational. Not in terms of, oh, I now have to go and buy this one and this one and this one because I liked the way it looked, but they can be educational just purely from the perspective of seeing the colors, seeing what might work on your skin tone. Because if you're looking at these palettes and you hear me say, oh, I really enjoy that one, and you see that I am pasty white, meanwhile you're of a tan complexion, that could be a really good indication that maybe that palette might not work for you, and maybe you need to do more research, and maybe you need to seek out creators with a deeper deeper skin tone to see if they own that palette and if it's something that would work for you. So anyway, this is a very rambly way of saying, please take these videos with a grain of salt. Please take them as more of an entertainment value / education value. And please don't shame people for what they have or what they do not have, whether that is on my channel or anywhere else for that matter. So with that little rant out of the way, let's jump in. Where are we going to start? How are we going to do this? I'm a lefty, so let's start left to right. We're going to start with my Too Faced Love Flush Blush palette. I believe this palette came out for holiday shortly after these Too Faced Love Flush blushes were released. By now, unfortunately, these blushes have been discontinued, even though I adore them. I don't have a single blush in the full size of this, and that was a conscious decision. When they came out with this, I decided I was just going to buy the palette, and at that time these were the only shades that were available. They only came out with 6. I don't know if they ever ended up making more or not, but I loved the idea of having all 6 in one pretty compact palette. To this day, I really enjoy this palette. If you guys have watched me, you probably have heard me mention Alexandra Lizette a couple of times. She's actually in the process of panning this palette, so if you're curious to see that, she's really entertaining. I love her panning videos. She's an eyeshadow enthusiast, so she has a ton of videos and eyeshadows on her channel, and I highly recommend it. But this is the palette she's currently panning, and she's inspired me to use it actually quite a bit more this year. I am not obviously close to panning any of these shades, as you can see, but you can also see which ones I really enjoy. Baby Love, which is this one right here, is definitely my favorite. It's almost rubbed off as far as that lettering, the Too Faced, the T and the F is concerned. I really like I Will Always Love You, love Hangover. I like Your Love is King in the winter time, and honestly, there really isn't one I don't like in here. This is a palette that basically gives me almost everything I need. So essentially, if I was somebody who was a minimalist,
which I'm not,
this might be the only palette I would ever need. It's getting older, but it still performs beautifully, and I really enjoy it. By the way, I'm not going to swatch in this video because this is just a little too much. I can't be swatching everything. All right, another palette I'd like to right away get out of the way is this one. This is my Hourglass Ambient Lighting Palette. These are the powders in dim light, incandescent light, and radiant light. Those of you guys that have been following my channel for any length of time and have watched any of my panning videos, you probably know that this is a palette that I am panning this year. So I'm not going to open it up and show it to you, but there's one shade left in here that I am still working on. So if you're curious, you can watch any of my panning videos, especially my very first introduction, because that would show you the product obviously and where I started. It has 3 powders in it. The deepest one I am currently using as a bronzer, and that is the only shade that is still left in this palette, and you guys will see that in an upcoming pan project update. Then I have this MAC Hyper Real Glow palette. This is a highlighter palette. It's absolutely beautiful. It has 3 shades, of which 2 work quite nicely for me, and that one, to be honest, is a bit dark, so we'll have to see what I do with that eventually. I am not sure if I'm going to declutter anything in this video. I might, but a lot of these products I really need to explore further before I decide what I'm going to do with them, because obviously I don't need all of these face palettes. Nobody clearly does, but for now I'd really like to enjoy most of these some more, and I definitely do love these 2 highlights. This is going to stick around. This is the Hourglass Blush palette. The 3 blushes that are in here are Luminous Flush, Incandescent Electra, and Mood Exposure. I adore Mood Exposure. That is that one at the end right there, the most nudie blush of the 3, but honestly all 3 are absolutely beautiful. This is a fantastic palette. I wonder, should I swatch this one? I said I wouldn't swatch, but okay. The swatches are backwards. I apologize. I should have thought that through.
I'm a mess. Okay, let's redo this. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3.
There they are. They are beautiful. They really are. And I would love to use this palette a lot more than I have. I have used it because I've had it for quite a few years and I've used it a lot, but this is one of the more expensive palettes I have, and I really would like to get more use out of this one. So I'm glad that I'm going through this because it's going to remind me to use more of these products. This has been, I think, in a shop my stash, so I've definitely used it this year, but not enough. Never enough. Okay, then we have this palette. This is the ABH Dream Glow Kit. I bought this actually because Angelica Nyquist here on YouTube, and I will link the channels of anybody that I talk about. Angelica talked about how this is a fantastic palette to use for inner corner highlight. And I've mentioned this palette in a video I've done of all new palettes that I have yet to try. This made it into that video if I remember correctly, and honestly I still haven't tried it because I've been pulling other eyeshadows into my Shop My Stashes, and because this is a highlighting palette I just keep forgetting to throw it in with my eyeshadow palettes and actually give it a try. This might go into my fall Shop My Stash. I'm gonna have to think about that. Since we are on these holographic highlighter topics, I also have this Naked Cosmetics which came in a BoxyCharm, kind of similar idea with these different colored highlighters, and the only reason I'm keeping this one is I'd actually like to compare the two palettes and just see which one I'm going to enjoy more, because I think in the long run I'm only going to keep one of these. So let's open them up together and just compare them. So there we have those. They have very different colors, as you guys can see. Like this one has more of those blues and greens and golds, and then it has the pink and the purples here, and this is more like pinky purple almost all around. You've got this one more yellowy sunshine shade, and this one's like a more of a corally peach. But I'm gonna have to see how I like the formula, and I'm gonna have to see whether it's really worth it for me to keep both of these palettes, because I don't see me using either one of these as actual highlighters all that often. So I'm gonna have to try them both ways and see what I feel comfortable with, and whether I'm gonna keep both, one or the other, or who knows, if this is not my makeup style, maybe eventually I'll get rid of both. After all, I am no Angelica Nyquist when it comes to color, but I've been enjoying spicing things up a little bit. So this is a palette I got in BoxyCharm, and I believe this is one I forgot to include in any of my brand new product videos, but this is definitely a palette I have yet to try. This is the Sugar Peach Wet and Dry Face and Eye Palette. It has 4 different shades. Has a beautiful mirror, but it's probably going to blind you guys. I am hoping that this is going to be a really nice blush on me once I do try it, and I'm hoping that this will work as a highlighter and that it will not be too deep. Not quite sure yet what I'm going to do with these two colors. I feel like this is going to be a little bit too bronzy for blush and just for me in general, and that has a lot of sparkle to it. So I just don't know. I don't know. Maybe I should even save it and keep it for potentially a future giveaway, since it is brand new and untouched. So we're gonna see. Well, this is one of those not sure what I plan on doing with this product situations. I think it's beautiful. I think the packaging is beautiful. I think the products inside look beautiful. I have no idea how they perform, and I'm just gonna have to see what I feel in the moment when it's like a Shop My Stash time, and time for me to decide what to do with that one. Right here I have 2 duos. I have an Ulta Beauty duo. It's a bronzer and highlighter, and I have swatched these. I believe I've tried using this once, but it's been a while, so I really have no opinion on this whatsoever. This came as like a free gift with purchase, and I kept it because I thought both colors could work for me. This might be a little too warm, this bronzer, but it might work. I just did a bronzer collection video recently. I can link that. I should probably go and compare this with some of my singles and just see what I think of it before I decide whether I'm going to keep this or not. But for now it's going to stay because I feel like I really need to give it another chance. This I've already talked about in my blush makeup collection video. I accidentally put this in there, and at that point I was already filming. I didn't feel like taking it out and cutting and editing all that out. So you guys have seen this already if you watched that, but this is my Natasha Denona Mini Diamond and Glow set. It came in a Sephora kit that I purchased right at the very tail end of 2019, right before my no-buy, and I've been loving this. I've been loving the blush. Highlighter is a little too glittery for me, so not my favorite highlighter, but this blush is, in my opinion, like a much better version of NARS orgasm. Okay, I have this Vintage by Jessica Liebeskind palette. This is something again that came in a subscription box. It's an illuminating face highlighter set in rose quartz and chocolate diamond. I've been holding on to this palette for the longest time for two reasons. I love the formula and I think these shades are extremely unique in my collection. I really love these shades. The only problem with them, and the reason for why I don't reach into this palette too often, is I really do feel like they are a little too dark for my skin tone. But the formula is so smooth. These are so beautiful. Can you guys see that? But can you also see how they're just too dark? So I don't know. I think I need to give these one last try and just see if these can work as blush toppers and if I'm actually going to enjoy using them as such. And if not, I think I need to find somebody to pass this on to, because I do think it's beautiful formula and I do think somebody would absolutely enjoy this. So if this is not something I can make work, it really needs to go to a new loving home. Okay, since we've been on the topic of highlighters, let's talk about these two. This is the Smashbox Spotlight Palette in Pearl. I believe initially this was a collaboration with Casey Holmes, and then they redid the packaging and made it like a regular Smashbox packaging, and that's when I picked it up. I really enjoy this palette. Again, not every shade works for me, which is kind of a bummer, but whenever I do use it, I'm reminded of how much I like the formula. So this is another one of those products that we'll see if it's gonna stay in my collection for a while or if there's gonna be a point where it needs to go. But you guys could see, right? Could you see those swatches go on? I mean, this is stunning. And honestly, the only shade I truly can use easily is that one, that top shade right there. Sorry, I keep swatching backwards. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm ready to let this go. Maybe I need to use that shade a bit more. And then if I do find somebody in my life who's a little deeper that could use both of these other shades, maybe at that point it will be time to let this go. This, on the other hand, is one that I can make the shades work. They're a bit less everyday for me. It's more of like a holographic type of palette. This is the Laura Geller Life Glows On Illuminator palette. I found this at TJ Maxx for I'm sure a really reasonable price. And I'm sorry, the whole packaging is so reflective. I can't even imagine what that's probably looking like on camera. But this has three shades. It has the Opal Crush, the French Fizz, and the Diamond Dust. These are all really beautiful. So we've got 1, 2, 3. You could see they're like kind of not your traditional highlighter shades. These two I feel like I would get more use out of. This purpley one, this Opal Crush, I'll have to experiment. I haven't used that color yet. I've used only the other two. All right, I think that's it for all highlighter palettes. Let's see what we've got. We've got some blushes coming up. So this is the ABH Blush Trio in Pink Passion. I got this at TJ Maxx, I want to say for like about $10. I've already talked about this in a previous video, but I actually enjoy these blushes. I know a lot of people don't particularly love this formula, and these went on sale because everybody was saying they're kind of just okay. And you know, maybe they are just okay in comparison to a few other brands I own, but considering the size and considering the fact that you get 3 different shades, I know right now none of us are traveling, but when I did, I used to take this with me quite a few times, and I really enjoyed having 3 different blushes in such a small little compact. You will see that aside from very few palettes here, I don't really have anything small that gives me such a vast variety. Even this Love Flush palette, it's definitely not as travel friendly. Yes, you have 6 options, but I'm less likely to travel with this than I am with something like this. So I really enjoy this little trio just for how compact and convenient it is. And while it's not a mind-blowing formula, I really think it's quite nice. And this is a Lavrova palette. This was part of a collection of theirs. I wish I remembered now what it was called. I want to say maybe California Dreaming, but honestly, I could be so off. I cannot remember. I know they had a eyeshadow palette with a very similar artwork, and then this was their face palette that came out with that collection. I found this also at like TJ Maxx or a Marshall's sometime either in 2018 or 2019, I can't remember. And while the few times that I've used this, I have really adored the formula, and mostly I am talking about Wavelength and Ray. I am torn about what to do with this palette. I'm gonna hold on to it for now because I can't think of somebody that I could immediately pass this along to. I love the Lorac Face Products formula, but unfortunately this specific palette, I feel like the shades are just not quite right for my skin tone. Like this Sunlight shade, which I guess is meant to be a highlight, is too deep on my skin tone. This Golden Hour, I guess bronzy blush, just pulls too bronzy, like too coppery on me, and I just don't think it looks good. I think if you're somebody where during the summer you get that rich, beautiful olivey golden tan, even if you're fair colored, but if you tan differently than I do, because I barely tan, I basically burn, then I think that would look fantastic on you. But in my case, it just doesn't really work. Obviously this was a limited edition collection. You can no longer get this. Not that I am even suggesting that anybody get any of these products. With my no buy, I'm all about using what you already have. But if you have this in your collection and you are of a fair skin tone and you figured out a great way of using it, I would love it if you would share that with me. I would love it if you would leave me a comment, because I would like to use this more, and I have actually tried. But aside from Wavelength and Ray, very light-handed, I can't seem to figure out how to use these other two shades. And at some point I feel like I'm gonna have to let go of this palette because I just feel guilty keeping it and using only 50% of it. Okay, and then this is something I maybe should have included in my singles blushes, but to be honest guys, I forgot, because this was in a palette, this was in a larger Z palette with a bunch of random eyeshadows as well, and I hope to do a separate video on all of my single eyeshadows. So I took the blushes out of that palette and just popped them into this little Z palette. I couldn't fit them all in, so you can see this one's kind of a little bit on the run, on the loose. But I have these 4 face products that are in a Z palette, so I figured I'd include them here because technically they are in a palette. This is a Makeup Geek blush in Romance. I got this, I want to say, in a subscription box, and it's a really pretty peachy blush. I'll be honest, I almost never use these because I forget that they're in a Z palette, and this is kind of the story of my life. Anytime I depot things or buy singles of anything and put them in a Z palette, I then end up unfortunately neglecting those products. So I need to get better about that, or I need to be really wise and never buy singles in the future. It's one or the other. This is a Boots number 7 blush in Honey, and this is one I actually used to use a ton until for some unknown reason I decided to depot it. And then of course, as I just said, it's been sitting in a palette of doom and not getting used. Same with this blush. This used to be my favorite blush. You guys can probably even tell. For a Tarte blush, for me, this is as good as it gets. I've managed to rub off the inside pattern here. This blush, it's not marked because this was part of a palette. Many years ago, Tarte had a palette that I adored. I traveled with all the time. It was, I believe, called Rainforest. It wasn't Rainforest of the Sea, but it was one of the Rainforest palettes. If I find a picture online, I will pop it on screen. It was a round palette. It had a gorgeous snake on the front, and it had like this wood sort of design to it, and it had eyeshadows as well as a bronzer and a highlighter on the outside, and then this blush in the center. I adored that palette, and to this day I'm still kind of kicking myself for depotting this and getting rid of the rest of the palette, giving that away. At that point I felt like I exhausted the palette. I felt like I really wanted to try new things. I was kind of over it, and that is why I got rid of it. But I got so much use out of it. I don't believe I actually ever ended up hitting pan on any of the products, but pretty much every single product in that palette had major dips in it because it was one of the only palettes then I owned. It was one of my first face palettes. It had the bronzer and the highlighter that I used all the time. It had this blush that I used all the time, and it had a really nice mix. I think it was like 6 eyeshadows, and it was a palette I used to travel with all the time. Those of you guys that are new to my channel might not know I'm a concert pianist, so whenever I travel for performances, whether it is throughout the US or abroad, I obviously have to, pack my makeup, but I have to try to do it minimally because sometimes you're going from town to town and you don't want to be hauling a bunch of stuff. So that palette was a lifesaver. And I saved this blush from it because I adored it so much. And unfortunately, I've practically stopped using it because now it is in a Z palette and I completely forget that it's here. I should probably see if it's still good. Tarte blushes never really swatch very well, but this seems actually like it's still pigmented and I should still give it a go and see if I still like it. Because if I no longer really like it, I might as well just start getting rid of these sort of individual products. Oh, I forgot to show you guys this one. I think this one is it a Revlon blush? What is this? No, this is a L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Blush in 205 Sculpted Rose. And I also remember keeping this one, depotting it and keeping it because I really loved this dusty rose type of shade. It was a deeper shade that I really enjoyed in the fall, winter months, and I should give it a go and see if I'm still gonna like it all these years later, because honestly, these 4 blushes, I can't remember when was the last time I reached for these. So I need to pull these into a Shop My Stash and see if these are going to stick around or not. And this is actually making me really happy that I'm doing these collection videos. I was really scared of doing these. I've been promising them since January or February of this year, and I just thought that I would get so overwhelmed. And while that is happening a bit, if anything, what I'm noticing is I am seeing products again that I used to love or that I haven't given enough love, and I am getting excited about trying them out. So I'm happy about that. Okay, next we have this Wander Beauty Trip for 2. This came again in a subscription box, BoxyCharm, because that was really the only subscription box I was getting before my no-buy for quite a while. This is considered a blush and bronzer duo, and while I'm really pale, and if you guys saw my bronzer video, you even probably remember there was a Cover FX bronzer in there that, especially on camera, came out really light. I don't think it's quite that light in person, but honestly, this one, Coaster Right, I don't understand this bronzer, because this is like, even on my skin tone, I just don't get it. What is it? Where is it? I'm not sure if that's ever going to show up on me. I need to still try it. I've tried the blush and I do enjoy it, but I don't understand how this can possibly be a bronzer on pretty much anybody. And here's the blush. The blush is really pretty. So I don't know, I see myself, unless I fall in love again with that blush, I see myself eventually parting ways with this product, but I would like to give it another chance. This is a Sonia Kashuk palette in Pretty Cheeky. It's a face palette with a blush, bronzer, and highlighter, and I don't really want to open it because the highlighter is part of my project pan. So if you guys are curious to see what this looks like, you can check out any of my previous project pan videos, and you will see that in there. Moving on, let's do some of these baby palettes. I have this Jouer blush duo. I bought this also shortly before my no-buy year. I've always wanted to try the Jouer blushes, and I just didn't want to spend the $30 or whatever they cost for their full-size blush duos. I have to admit though, guys, I still really want to try one of those, even though I thought this would kind of fill the void. This was a holiday release, I think, in 2019, and it's like a mini version of their blushes in new colors that they hadn't released at that point. The colors are Marigold and Rose Petal. I really enjoyed this when I brought this into Shop My Stash earlier this year, and I really need to use these blushes more. I keep forgetting for some reason that I have this. And then these 2 palettes might be the only ones that I actually get rid of. This is Pure Sculpt little mini palettes. I got these on clearance at Ulta, and they were really affordable, and I really adored the idea of having these little baby palettes with 3 highlight shades and 3 bronzer shades. Here's what they look like. I also liked the idea of the mirror, even though they're so tiny. I kind of thought that these palettes would do what the ABH blush palette does for me, where I could travel with these, but they would give me different options. But I'll be honest, I feel like the bronzer palette is way too dark and too warm for me, the majority of it. You can see it right there. Really like this shade, this first one. But these two, I think, are too dark for me. I could give this a try. I could pull this into a Shop My Stash and see if I like that color enough to use it in the future and pan it or something like that. But I really don't see myself using these other two shades. So I'm tempted to declutter that. I'm really not sure. I'm gonna think on it, but I'm really tempted to declutter that. And similarly, I don't know, I don't love these highlighters. So the highlighters, I feel like, are less of a shade thing, although you can see the middle one is definitely too dark for me. But this, I feel like, is a formula thing. So I think I'm definitely gonna let go of the highlighter palette, this Pure Glow palette, and I am going to think about this one, just only because of that first shade, to be honest. Okay, we're almost there. This is a Beggar palette from, I think, 2 holidays ago. This is their Après-Ski Glow Face palette, and I bought this because I remember Samantha March raving about this. Oh, this has a giant mirror, so how am I gonna do this? Okay, we're gonna do it like that. This whole palette is so reflective. I'm sorry, guys. I have used this a few times, but again, I don't feel like I've used it enough. And I do feel like there are a few shades in here that work nicely for me, but not everything. Something like this is way too coppery and bronzy for me, so I really need to figure out how I would use that. These 3 shades I can make work. The blush I can make work, although it's a little teeny bit too bright for my liking. And I do enjoy the bronzer. It's a little shimmery, and I kind of prefer my bronzers either matte or slightly sheeny. But I feel like this is another one of those palettes that I need to pull into a Shop My Stash. I really need to try to use every single color. I need to figure out how many of them I really like, how many I'm like meh about, and how many don't work at all. And based on that ratio, decide whether this palette is going to stick around. Okay, another really old palette, but one that I refuse to let go of, is the Sephora Ombre Obsession palette. This is a face palette with primarily blushes, and it does have a couple of shades that could be used as bronzy blush, and it has this highlighter in the middle. And I will be honest, I love this palette primarily for that highlighter. The blushes are really nice, don't get me wrong. I do enjoy using them every once in a while, but it's that highlight that I really wish I had in a single. I adore this highlight. Oh goodness, that is just so pretty. This is one I use in the winter a lot because there's a little more icy even on my pale skin, but there's something about it that I have loved for years, because I've had this for quite a few years. This is not by any means a new palette. I want to say this was like a holiday release maybe in 2014, 2015, who knows. Speaking of older products that I remember being hyped up on YouTube, and then I randomly found it at TJ Maxx a couple of years ago and I snatched it up, and that's this Makeup Forever Pro Sculpting Duo. This is another one I got for the highlight because the bronzer is definitely too deep, too orangey ready tone for me, but I fell in love with that highlight. I remember back in the YouTube watching days, and I just couldn't justify paying whatever this cost. I don't remember the full price for it. And then years later, I saw this randomly at TJ Maxx, and I just remembered, it just clicked. I remembered this product. I was like, oh, I remember everybody talking about this back in the day, and I decided to try it. And I'll be honest, while I wasn't sure whether the formula would hold up all these years later with so many new releases and so many formulas being improved on, while I can't really speak for the bronzer because I can't really use it, I really enjoy this highlighter. I mean, you can see just right there on my finger. I mean, this highlighter is so pretty. This probably should have gone in my highlighter collection video. I haven't filmed it yet, but I figured since it's a duo, I would include it here. But definitely this is one I use specifically for the highlighter. We have the Becker Afterglow Sunset. It's a palette I really enjoy. I used to have the original Afterglow. I decluttered it, and I'm still kind of kicking myself for that because that also had some beautiful shades. Kelly Gooch here on YouTube was panning that, and every time she would talk about the Afterglow palette, I would just think, ugh, I should have kept it. But the reason for why I kept this one, or I bought this one, I think I bought it also at TJ TJ Maxx or Marshalls, and it wasn't actually that affordable considering. I think I still paid like about $30 for this product, and it probably was only 40 or 42 or something to begin with. I got this because it had a lot of the Baccarat heavy hitters, so to speak. And this palette actually enabled me to declutter my full-size champagne pop because I knew I will never go through a full-size champagne pop. I used to have it, I no longer do, and I now have it just in this little palette. So the shades that we have in here are the Shimmering Skin Perfector in Crystal Gold, the, of course, Shimmering Skin Perfector in Champagne Pop, their Sunlit Bronzer in Capri Coast, which I've heard so many YouTubers talk about for years, and I didn't try it until I got this palette, and I do really enjoy it. Then I have the Mineral Blush in Flower Child, which is definitely another favorite for years and years of many influencers and many YouTubers. And then there's the Luminous Blush in Snapdragon. I feel like this little palette gives me pretty much everything, kind of the best of the best, sort of the greatest hits of Becca Cosmetics. And I really like the idea of having this because I do think this is something that is great for traveling. If I ever do get a chance to travel again, this has everything I need in one little palette. I don't need to take highlighters, bronzers, and blushes separately. I can just take this and it has all of those products in one. Another kind of all-in-one palette, and one that I got because aesthetically I thought it was just absolutely stunning, is this NARS Stephen Klein face palette. And while there is a repeat product in here, because if you guys have seen my bronzer collection, you know I have a single of the Laguna bronzer. I don't know, when I got it, I just didn't mind that because I just loved the aesthetic of this palette. So this has the Laguna bronzer, this has the Paloma Contour Blush Duo, and then it has 4 different blushes in Robotic, Blasphemy, Luster, and Dolce Vita. And while I'll be honest, I don't use it as much as I should, I don't know if I will ever get rid of this palette just because I find it absolutely stunning. This Paloma Duo, especially this contour shade, I have used that quite a bit. I haven't really used Laguna all that often because usually I do go into my single instead. I really enjoyed this blush. I have tried that one quite a few times. This is like a very typical light pink with a little maybe rose, like a rose pink. It's a very unassuming but very easygoing everyday color for somebody with my skin tone. And I can't really speak yet too much about these two. I feel like those two I've used the least. But I really love this palette. I think it is just so stunning, and it's quite weighty. It's really well made. And then I think last but not least is this Kevin Aqua palette. This was an amazing TJ Maxx find. I found this last year. It was miraculously not touched or swatched or tampered with, and it was only $15. If you guys know anything about Kevin Aqua, you know that it's a pretty pricey brand. I believe this face palette originally was like $60 or $65 retail value. So when I found this at TJ Maxx, I was doing such a happy dance, and I have used this palette quite a bit, especially the face products. These are the only cream products I have in a palette. I do wish they were separated, of course, like for example in the way that Natasha Denona does it. I think the way she does it is just so cool and so classy with the little flap. But you know, it's fine. I still make it work. I really do enjoy that sculpting cream and the Candlelight Cream highlighter. I really love the sculpting powder and even the Candlelight powder, although it is a pretty subtle highlighter. But if I want a bit more oomph, these two shades are actually also highlighters, the shade in Brighten and Starlight. So I use this primarily as a face palette, even though you can use these 4 bottom shades as an eyeshadow palette. I have taken this palette with me again on trips and such, and in that case, if I know it's a trip where I'm not going to have time to do a lot of elaborate eyeshadow looks, I will just bring this and pack a separate blush or something like that, and that's all I need, because this can definitely create a very nice simple eye look. I have a shade here to add a little drama and a little depth. I have this shade or this one that I can use in the crease as a transition color, and then I have 2 if not 3 lid options depending on what I want to do. So this is one of my favorite face palettes. I really do enjoy this Kevin Aqua face palette. ladies and gents, I think we went through every single one of my face palettes. I hope that I did not forget to talk about any of these, and I hope that I didn't forget to include something else in my collection, but I did try to scour every single nook and cranny and corner of my desk that my makeup lives on. So I hope that you guys really enjoyed these. I would love to hear if you own any of these. I know a lot of these are older. I know I don't have the newest, latest, and greatest, especially considering this whole past year I haven't been shopping for new products at all. But I would love to know if you've tried any of these and whether you own them or whether you used to own them. And I would also love to hear what are some of your favorite face palettes, because I do have to say, while I'm trying to be a lot more critical, and while I know face palettes are not maybe the most practical all the time, there's something about face palettes that I really, really adore. To this day, one that I regret not buying, and maybe that should be a future video for products I regret not purchasing, especially prior to my no-buy year, is the Smashbox Cali Contour palette. That went on sale at Ulta for their 21 Days of Beauty, I want to say 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and I was this close to purchasing it, but I remember thinking, I have so many palettes, I just really should not be buying anymore. So the whole no-buy mentality has been long in the making, and I have already started the seeds prior to this year. But yeah, I definitely have a weakness for a lot of different makeup categories, and face palettes is one of them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what are your favorites. I'd love it if you would go ahead and hit the like button and let me know if you are enjoying these collection videos. I'd also love it if you haven't already, if you would consider subscribing. And other than that, I really want to thank you for stopping by and spending part of your day with me. And I hope that you are doing really well. I hope that you're continuing to stay safe and healthy. I hope that you are continuing to take care of yourself and those around you. And I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Bye!
Hi guys! What was that voice? That I need to figure out a healthier... Yeah, because, you know, why not go on a joyride at 2 a.m.? Yes, I am again filming at 2 a.m. because that's like the only time I have to do this. That's a loud bus. Or truck, or whatever. And I cannot wait to see you in my future. Why can't I say that?